as I was telling you before we started recording, like I've been getting, and it's honestly like this year, like now it's 2025, but this past year, 2024, at the end of 2023, there's been so many people that got laid off in the games industry in general. Um, and I keep getting a lot of people writing me, calling me, asking me like, how do I find work? How do I find a job? What do I do? Etc. And then I was thinking about doing like a just an episode about just that. And then you messaged me basically all the same questions yesterday. Um, because what you're doing within the keep right now is like contract work, but I mean like people are talking about like I want a job, I want to get a fucking 401k and health insurance plan and all that kind of stuff and or whatever. And in some cases it's just I want to work in the games industry with no requirements whatsoever. And I feel like a lot of people actually get screwed because they're just willing to do anything to be in the games industry. And so I've seen people like getting paid, in my opinion, like less than half of what they ought to be paid for the position they were working, but because they were, I'm not going to say dumb, I'll say naive enough to just, oh, well, I don't want to ask for more because then I might lose a job, or they wouldn't have given me the position if I asked for more, that kind of thing. And I don't necessarily think it's all. There's a lot of abuse out there, but a lot of it is just like folks ought to know, in my opinion, like what to do and how to advocate for themselves. So this is going to be a conversation that is largely, at least the start of it, will be about that, and then also like we'll talk about your work and how you got into the Keep team and Stellar Valkyrie and everything, and just who you are as a person. So just relax, take some of your gummies or whatever you're gonna do, and we'll ride it out. So just to begin with, like trying to like introduce yourself, like who you are, what you do currently, what your aspirations are, and then we'll try to go from there.
Sure. So my aspirations ever since I was a child was actually I wanted to work in software because I grew up playing Duke Nukem. I grew up playing Doom, Wolfenstein 3D, and it wasn't until about 2006, so about 6, 7 years after I started playing these games, that I realized, hey, you can make these levels in a piece of software called Doom Builder. And I started doing that, got really into it, was pretty isolated, but I would say I was semi-known in the Doom community on Z-Daemon for making my capture the flag stuff and being obnoxious here and there.
As it were, as everyone in the Z-Daemon community has like this story of like, I used to be a terrible person. Like all the administrators for Z-Daemon have at one point in time or another been like banned from Z-Daemon. I've noticed. Like everybody has at some point, just maybe except for AF domains, like they've all just been kicked out. Like you're such a troublemaker, and then later came back and became like a moderator or even a developer for the community. So that's very interesting.
Oh yeah, I was so addicted that I had to ban myself once. Like, no joke.
For
But
people listening, just to be clear, Z-Daemon is a source port. It's an online multiplayer source port for Doom 2 that is very, very popular amongst old people and me.
yeah, and on this platform you can upload your own content and play with other people. Capture flag, co-op, survival, free for all, deathmatch, all that fun stuff. But it was once I had been working really hard on a project that was very dear to me, called Black Girls Capture a Flag, that I was kind of like, I could use this as a portfolio piece, and wanted to go to school for animation. So I went to Milwaukee Area Technical College here in Milwaukee, where I live currently. And I did just that. I got an associate's degree in animation, or I pretty much, it's an associate's degree. So I know the fundamentals of 3D modeling. I used motion capture, Photoshop, Illustrator, life drawing. I had classes of literally just drawing cartoon characters. But after getting um, that degree, I did one of my professors, he worked for EA, and the company's name was Digital Iris. I think they're defunct right now. They're not really doing anything. Their website's still up as far as I know.
Right.
But I was the lead designer on that project. And you can actually see Digital Iris's name credited in Dead Space 2. Just a fun fact. But it wasn't until about 2014 or 2015 that I had to leave the company because they took the game I was working on a completely different direction. So that's kind of where I had a big gap in my resume of showing what I actually did,
Right.
like with my degree. So, I mean, I took up whatever job I could at that point to pay the bills. Unfortunately, I've been stuck in automotive for the last 10 years now. Pays the bills, got 401k, all that fun jazz. Not fun, but you get the point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until last year that I kind of came hat in hands to a Z Damon. Is he a moderator at this point? Uber
Yeah. So Uber is a developer. He like
developer.
yeah. I don't know. They got some because it's I have tons of podcasts early on in the show about this subject, so I'm not going to rehash it all. But basically, like it's super controversial that Z Damon is closed source as opposed to open source, like Zandronum or Otomex, some other source ports that people use. And so, like, very few people actually have access to the code. And I believe that Uber is one of the people who can fuck with it. I don't know if that for a fact, but I do believe that he can see some stuff. But anyway, he in particular, like he develops he like when they would have like their very specific like holiday sessions, like we're gonna do survival and Christmas World or whatever. Uber has been doing that for years, like all these different holidays and stuff, Halloween jams and that kind of thing. And then he would be like sort of the person who makes all the maps for people to do those sessions with. And then I think that's how he worked his way up. I would have to have Uber on one day. Like I actually have a recording somewhere from probably 4 or 5 years ago where we interviewed Uber for it was Uber and AF Domains for Talking Doom with Flambeau, which was like this like kind of Z Damon oriented spinoff show we did. And he had literally just got braces like the day before. And we were all shit faced. So we decided it's probably best not to put this out into the world. It wasn't that it was like we didn't say anything wrong. It was just like you can't fucking understand half of what's being said anyway. So
I get it. I had braces when I was a kid. It was horrible.
yeah, me too. Yeah, I had braces in like all the way through middle school. So like basically, I came to high school like a new man. Like, look at my shiny non-brace having teeth, ladies.
Look at my stunning teeth.
Hi, it's me. I'm Tyler. No. Um, yeah. So I think that's where Uber stands with the Zidane community. And then, I mean, I met him through that, and then he later became like a professor of game design at college there in the Netherlands. And
Yeah.
yeah. So you
I mean,
went to him.
I went to him kind of hat in hand saying, "Hey, I heard through one of my friends on Zdamon that you're making a game. Can I help contribute some textures or something here and there?" He's like, "Sure, we can use whatever help we want or we need." I was kind of like, "Cool, I'll start making some textures for you guys."
Mm.
And he was kind of like, he texted me back a while back or a while later. I don't know if it was actually not sure if it was him, but I got a message from somebody saying, "Didn't you make Black Rose Capture Flag?" And I was like, "Yes, I did." "Did you also make this?" I feel ashamed even bringing it up. Mess with your mind for Z David. And I'm like, "Yes." It's like, would you like to do some levels? I'm like, that is exactly what I would love to do.
Right.
So I started making up this ice planet, which I didn't even fully understand the game at that time. Um, but fortunately, the game needed a ice world, so I we've kept it so far. I mean, it's changed drastically, but yeah, we got that ice world, and I'm currently working on the fire world as well. I'm not sure how much I could talk about the game.
Talk about whatever you want. I mean, like the basic idea of is you can talk about the game. I just don't want the story spoiled. Like just to be clear with it, like with everybody's NDA, it has nothing to do with like don't show people what you're working on. Don't talk about like, oh, it's gonna have a an ice world or whatever. I mean, there's some things where it's like I'd rather we not make promises that I'm not 100% certain we can keep. You know.
Yeah.
So if you were to say some shit like well, we're gonna have I don't know, just insert like we're gonna have RTX functionality in GZD. Like, well, first of all, we're not planning that, but second of all, like, don't set people up to think that's gonna happen, and then we're not able to implement it. I know that somebody actually did make a mod for it, but it's at this point, it's like if we start fucking with the version of GZ Doom we're using, there's a lot of stability issues. It was some, like you could never foresee these challenges kind of stuff with Stellar Valkyrie. But yeah, just don't spoil the story. That's my biggest thing. That's to me, the crux of the game is kind of oriented around that. It's going to be probably one of the more narratively driven games ever made in GZ Doom.
Oh,
I
for
mean,
sure.
and heavily inspired by like the work that happened on Adventures of Square, which I was a huge fan of, and I can't believe it wasn't a commercial product. I was like, there's no excuse for this not to be a commercial product. Like, you should all be rich. Like Matt Tropiano and Jimmy and Captain J and all those guys like that. You got Zazer. Like, y'all should all be fucking filthy rich from this game. It's amazing. It's really, really good, and it's just free.
I hope so. That would be like dream come true.
Yeah. But I was, at the time, I was actually just explaining this to my wife last night because she was asking me, like, how did you get into all this fucking nerd shit? And I'm like, long story. Long story, babe. So, but, like, it was 2019, 2020 when I, I don't know if it was Nash, but I think I heard through Nash that, basically like, hey, GZ Doom doesn't need an iWad anymore. Yeah, I was like, what? Like, for real? And then I just smelled money. I like looked like Vince McMahon with just dollar bills in front of my face. Like, dude, this is like because I knew from the podcast even just and hanging out with like different folks playing Quake and Doom and shit like that. I was like, man, there's so many people who have been honing their craft at this for like 25 years.
Yep.
That have never made a commercial game, and now they can do exactly what they're already doing and charge money for it on Steam. And then, of course, you see Hedon, and there were several others. I think Hedon was for me like the biggest example of like it could be really successful. Um, and then that was like the slew of GZ Doom on Steam games, and I was like, oh my god, like we could totally do this. So I grabbed, Scumhead and I grabbed Uber and I was like, you guys know what you're doing. I'll handle all the business. You have 6 months. And that 6 months turned into you and me are still talking in 2025. So
Well, one thing I think we have a lot going for us is I don't I have almost all those games on my Steam account, and none of them have the goofy, stupid humor that we've put into this game so far. Like,
yeah.
I've almost pissed myself in our brainstorming sessions
Well, it's just
because it's so ridiculous.
I'm really close with like Bridgeburner and Major Arlene and the whole Hellforge Studios community. Like I like them and everything, and I love like an example would be like Project Absentia is somewhat similar in many ways. It's just it was originally literally a My Little Pony mod, and I talked Sonya into like, no, you should totally like take all the Hasbro sue me shit out and just do this as a game. And it probably won't make you like millions of dollars, but at least you're doing what you already want to be doing and getting potentially paid for it and putting that on your resume, you know. And then that's how like Waffle Iron Studios was formed, and you know, they've done pretty decent so far. So and then that connection with Hellforge. But the thing is that like most of the games that have come out, the GZ Doom, Supplies, you know, whatever, are like these really serious Doom-alike games. And I was like, I don't want to fucking make Doom. I just want to use the Doom engine to make something fun.
Yeah.
And Adventures of Square were literally, I was like that, you know, like it could be kid friendly. Like it could be, you know, stop thinking about like the mature audience. Think about like, what if you made something that the whole family can enjoy? And which is weird coming from me because you know, I cuss all the time and everything, but like, I was like, I want something that like my kids could play and enjoy the same way that, you know, I still like Mario. I still like Zelda. I still like, you know, Buck Bumble, kind of like that kind of shit as an adult. I'm like, why can't that be something that we do? Which was something that I think a lot of people didn't expect from In the Keep, because it had like, especially the podcast was so like, you know, I'm not holding back anything I say and all that kind of thing, but that's what I really genuinely wanted to make, with Stellar Valkyrie anyway. So now we have you, we have Maria. We actually did pull in Captain J from the Adventures of Square team. I was like looking for a great pixel artist, and I kept telling people, they're like, well, what kind of pixel art are you looking for? I'm like, well, I really want it to be like Adventures of Square. And then Jimmy was like, you know, Captain J probably would be open to it. I was like, really? Like I assumed he was probably just like, I thought he would be like some executive, like actual game designer somewhere, who just did that as a hobby since it was free. But no, he's like, yeah, I'm open to it. Like, I totally, like, give me $100. I'm like, no, bro, we're gonna pay you way better than that. That's no, yeah, I love the whole team and I love the project, but I couldn't do it without the art team. Like, that's something that I've learned over time with game design in general. And take out your pens if you're, you know, an aspiring game dev out there. 70% of your budget is art. Period.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's just the fact with every game you'll ever make. If you're shooting below that and trying to make it work, you're probably not going to have a very good game, or you're going to be ripping off your artist.
Right.
Because
You need a good art team. And
yeah.
shout out to Maria and Jay. You guys are awesome. I can count on you guys for almost anything. I can count on you guys for everything.
And Gerb too for stepping in on
And the
3D
models. Gerb.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's been very interesting. This whole process has been a wild ride, because I had no aspirations whatsoever of being a game developer ever. I just thought I wanted it. I was just like fucking, you know, drunk in my spare bedroom with a microphone, wanting to talk to people about Quake, and that turned into, you know, now I'm interviewing like, you know, Dr. Justin Sledge about like esoteric ancient religion shit. Like, you could have never could have guessed where this whole journey would have taken us. But with you, so you were doing like these fucking weird, you know, whack ass offensive Doom mods and stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm not proud of those at all. They were hilarious at the time. Like, they're fun play, but like, oh no, they were offensive.
Did you ever happen to hear my my interview with Sergeant Mark Ford?
It's been a while, but yeah, like, he was just, from what I remember, it was he just wanted to be in the military, I think, and couldn't, so he focused on coding and made these really awesome, the Brutal Doom mod. And yeah, first time I saw that in Z Doom, I was like, holy shit, this is ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
it's a modern game just squished down into Doom. The art is amazing, the sound is amazing, playing is fun. I remember flipping off an imp for the first time and almost falling over laughing. That's awesome. Like, the things you can do with the Doom engine in general is ridiculous. Like, people look at it, oh, that's cute. Then like, no, sit down and look at this game. Wow, that's pretty cool. It's like, that's the same game. That's pretty much what he did. I love it.
Yeah, he definitely made Doom, like, for instance, like if I were to take just blank slate Doom 2 to a 20-year-old right now, and be like, play this. They'd be like, yeah, this is kind of fun, but it's dumb, you know? Like it's so old. And then if you put Brutal Doom in front of them, like I did this to my brother. I was like, try this. And he was like addicted to it. Like he was like on my laptop on the kitchen counter for hours. Like every day I would, every time I would come home, I'd be like, dude, do you still have that game? I'm like, dude, I will show you how to get it, on your laptop. It's like you could run it on a fucking toaster. But it was really, really important to the preservation of the Doom IP. I mean, like, tell me that the Doom Eternal looking at brutal Doom for a lot of the decisions they made, or even Doom 2016 with the like the brutality killings and like all the melee stuff and all that. It's a lot. It dramatically changed the course of the IP for Doom.
Oh
But
yeah,
it's
I mean,
that he is a case study for I was an idiot when I was a kid.
yeah,
Yeah. I did some shit that I'm not proud of, and the internet keeps everything forever, but people didn't know that.
yeah. I'm actually a little jealous of him because I mean, I'm sitting in my office and I've dedicated this room to my Doom room. I have posters and banners all over it.
Mhm.
And I'm reminded when I walk in here, there's a banner over my window of Doom Eternal. I remember playing it and being like, Sergeant Mark IV had an inspiration in that game. One of the best selling games of that year. And that's remarkable. My life could end that day after playing that if I was Sergeant Mark IV and be proud.
Right.
Like I would have been happy with what I accomplished in my life. That is amazing. I'm proud of him for him. That's really cool.
You're listening to KEEP in the Keep. Please take a moment to tell at least one other person how much you enjoy the show. That's right. Grab that link and send it to that buddy you're thinking of who you know would be interested in what we're talking about right now. Maybe post it somewhere. I know it seems scary, but you can do it. I believe in you. Don't hesitate to leave a comment and a 5-star review, a like, wherever you're listening. And if you want, Patreon supporters for this show get episodes early, access to our secret Discord channel, chances to suggest questions to our guests, our games, and whatever else I can do for you. Every little bit helps. This podcast directly supports my ability to do what I love and take care of my growing family. The link is in the show notes. Thank you, bless you, stay in the keep. So I want to kind of like get back to the sort of the topic at hand here is like, so what you worked for this other studio, you had an associate's degree at this point. And then ever since then, that kind of like fell apart. You've not worked in the games industry at all until you came back to In the Keep, as a contractor. So I want to kind of get into that. Like, what does that entail? Like, how does that affect the psyche? Because I had a totally unique, from what I understand, path in working in games. So I didn't go to I went to college for one semester. I took one class, aced it, and then I was like, this is a waste of time. I should be making an actual game instead of spending all of my free time doing this. Like just basically paying someone else to let me teach myself how to do something. So yeah, I took like a 3-day business course that was like free for military members while I was still in, and that's how I ended up running this business. So like for the different paths that people take, what was your experience like getting the degree, getting the job, and then now like finding that you couldn't find work in the industry?
Mainly it was kind of of a depressing point for me. We were making a third person style mech shooter at that company, and then they went from that changing the entire game to be a real-time strategy. So for anybody who's not familiar with games really, it would be like taking Call of Duty and then turning it into chess. It makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So being the lead designer, I'm like, um, I'm about to turn 26. I need health insurance. I need a full-time job.
Yep.
So I can't keep driving from my home, which is 45 minutes from the studio that we worked at. Was required to go in twice a week. I couldn't keep doing that. So I had to call it quits there. And it just got stagnant from there. There's no game studios in the area. I'm sure if I was smarter back then, I would have looked for some startup companies other than that one. Um, yeah, it was kind of a depressing point for me at that stage of my life. Um, I did pick up drawing during that time though.
Mm.
Um, Fast forwarding a little bit to a couple years ago when I started up my it was 2020, so it wasn't terribly. It was about 4 5 years, but I started illustrating children's books with my wife. So that was kind of the bridge between me working at the game studio, doing the children's books, and then going to Uber. Was kind of like, hey, I also draw cartoons if you need like kiddish kind of cartoon drawings at all for anything like that. So I like had a little art portfolio going. So that was kind of the only thing that was a little breadcrumb trail left of my portfolio.
Right. I, for the record, I think that's so much cooler than being like. I think that like owning a family children's book company sounds way cooler than video game industry. Like just I wish I had done something like that. It's like and I think we had talked about like what if you make like a side scroller adventure with your hamster character and all that kind of like I just love like creativity and stuff. Like me and my wife spent all of New Year's Eve making dream catchers together. Like I think stuff like that is so cool. Um, it's way less fucking hard than making a video game.
Oh,
Um,
it gets frustrating though. We
mm,
squabble over what to put on what page, or I'll draw the pose slightly different for the character,
yeah,
and I'll be in Photoshop drawing it for like an hour, finishing the background, and she'll be like, "No, I want it this way," and I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
yeah,
And then like it eventually will be like, you know what? We'll come back to it tomorrow. But like that moment, it's just frustrating.
mm,
But when you see the final result of it and you actually hold the book in your hand, it's all worth it. We just finished our third book,
mhm.
Pitter Patter Pirate Hamster, uh,
I'll put the links and everything in the show
links and
notes.
everything.
Yeah, I'll even
Yeah,
do like an Amazon affiliate link so that if they click on it and buy your book, we get money.
available at all fine bookstores everywhere.
Is it
Yeah,
actually on shelves and stuff at this point?
it's print on demand, I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah.
So I mean, my wife's the marketing person. I am just the illustrator. I draw. I come up with the character designs. She approves the designs of the characters. Um, and then she writes the story, and I kind of write up a bunch of poses. She'll tell me if she has an exact idea for a page, and then I'll draw it until she's like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I want." Then I'll take it to the computer and I'll sketch it up. Then I'll get approval of that, and then I draw it finally on the computer. So one page could take an entire day, unless it's something really simple. In our third book that's yet to be published. It is finished. It's just got to be published yet. There's literally one page that's a walnut floating away in the ocean. So that was like a stupidly easy page to do. Where there'll be another page where I actually put my 3D modeling to use
Mm,
in this, where we have a crashed boat or a boat floating in the ocean. I need it at the right angle. So I actually went into Blender and I modeled the ship, and I took a plane. I put a bunch, like made it a grid essentially, and it made it kind of look like waves in water. And I tilted, rotated the boat around so it's just that right angle. And I hit print screen. I threw it up in Photoshop, and I just traced over it. So it looks like I kind of half-assed it, but in all reality, it's like, no, that actually did take me quite a little bit of effort to do that. So
well, listen, man, I got a, impending baby showers and stuff like so you could maybe like send I've officially now, as far as I know, we're even Stevens on the sweater situation. So you could hit me with some children's books for my kiddo. I would read them to sleep with pitter patter and all that. Mm.
I've yet to buy the sweater.
Buy your sweater. Anyway, so I find it really interesting though that like you basically do run a small business. I mean, out of your house between you and your wife, making children's books and stuff. And
Essentially,
so
yeah.
the first thing I tell everybody who's like, how do I get a job in the games industry? The very first thing I want to tell them is don't. Like, not like don't work in the games industry, but I mean, like, you don't try to get, you can. I mean, I'll explore those options too. But I mean, you'll be far better off as an independent contractor. And the reason for that is there's a lot of reasons for it. Um, if you work at a company as an employee, they're they're inevitably going to cut people. You know, at the end of a project, they're going to cut everybody they don't need for the next project. That's just the name of the game. There's very few positions at a game studio that are like permanent positions. Where, you know, if you're like head of production, you know, your marketing team, that you know, then a lot of that goes into publishing too. These people are relatively stable, and even they're, you know, subject to the chopping block as any company, you know, would have it. But if you're an artist, and I hired an artist for we have this project that's going to last 3-4 years, and you know, and then when that project's done, if the next project we take on does not specifically call for what you can do, I'm cutting you. So I'm likely not to to employ you at all. I'm likely to just offer you a contract for that duration of time, and that's going to be the vast majority of your work. There's some ways around that. Like, let's say you're a Unity programmer, that kind of thing, or you're a you're a level designer, or a Blender artist, or rigger, like certain things that are going to kind of be needed for every project that you do as a studio, that you have a little bit more leeway, you know. But then there's also like where do you sit in the line of the people who do that? A very small studio, if you're the only guy, like in the Keep, right? Like if you're the only guy who does what you do, we're not getting rid of you, you know. But if there's like 3 or 4 of you, right? And well, the next project only, you know, we only really need one or whatever the hell. We don't need three. I don't know. But there's all of those things to take into account. So I'm not even just saying like don't try to get employed. I'm saying like it's not likely that you will find a employment where they're paying half your taxes and you have a 401k and you can retire off of it. So the best thing that you could do for yourself, not just you, I mean, I'm talking to anyone listening, is to form an LLC, like a partnership with somebody that you really like and trust, or if you're an artist, make an art studio that you can pimp yourself out to lots of different studios with. Like, I've known many people who do this, where it's like 2 or 3 artists, maybe more. And you know, let's say I have a Unity project or something coming up. I know it's going to last 3 years. Then I'm bidding for their time. Like, I literally hired you because I couldn't we could not afford some of the I'm not saying better, but I'm saying people who do this for themselves. Like, they start a company and they're like, yeah, you know, you hired me and my, you know, my other partners as a company. We charge this much money per level, you know, and we'll do all the texturing or whatever it is, like all whatever services they provide. And I literally, like, I was like, I can't afford, like, for the budget we have for this project, that's not really feasible. So I had to go looking for like folks like yourself. I literally had to go looking for folks like yourself who weren't going to ask me for as much. Um, I'm glad that we did, because I like the team that we're building, and ultimately the goal within the Keep is to have, you know, these are our people. This is the kind of games we make, you know, and we grew that from the ground up, and then hopefully then we can be in a position to like long-term contract or employ people, that sort of thing. But it's very, 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 very unlikely to get hired full time and not get laid off in the games industry, period. It's always going to be a per project sort of thing. And unless you work for a company like, let's say you work for Creative Assembly, you know, and they just make Total War. I mean, they have other things, but like that's there's always going to be the need for everything, every person and every position involved in the making of a Total War game. So that has some stability aspects to it. But your average game studio's not got one franchise. A lot of game studios are themselves contracting to publishers who hold IPs, and they just need a developer to make what they want made. And so then the whole company itself is in fact an independent contractor with several maybe employees, but likely independent contractors working within that company. Am I making sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Um, so then you would need to take it upon yourself to set aside retirement. You know, if you save up 100K and put it in a hedge fund or that kind of shit to set yourself up for retirement, rather than depending on the company to give you a 401k. Because even if you have, there's certain situations where like maybe you are employed for a good duration with a company and they have a 401k plan, and then you can just take that and apply it to something else later. You know, like you can, well, I have a new 401k, so I'm just transferring everything from my old one to that one. Like you could play it that way, and that there's nothing wrong with that. I did that with the military. Like I have my thrift savings plan that I saved up while I was in the Air Force, and if I ever were to take another job that has a 401k, like a Roth IRA or something like that, I could then apply it to that. Or I could just wait till I'm 65 and see what the military, you know, what the VA and all that stuff works out to. Like that's possible too. But I've just accepted a long time ago that I'm not going to depend on that. Like what I need to do is just take it upon my own. It's my own responsibility to set aside my own retirement fund. And that's a shitty thing with being employed, is that you're forever dependent on someone else to take care of all that shit for you. It's nice that they take care of it for you, but then you don't have any power over it. You can't make your own decisions about how you want to handle that. So it's take on more responsibility, yes, but also have the freedom to determine what you want to do with it. And
Yeah.
I guess my question to you is, why is it that you have like why do you have it in your mind that you need a job in the games industry? And then like what you don't have to name them if you don't want to, but like what companies are you looking at? Like what's the none of this is to like point you out or make you look bad in any way. It's more like so I can answer questions that are useful to lots of people who have the same questions.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm open about it. I mean, given um I recent diagnosis of epilepsy, I really have no choice, but very limited. I can't drive
Hmm.
um for up to 90 days after a seizure, and I have them almost weekly. So I'm depending on others to drive me around. So I was looking really hard at my degree and what I'm doing here in the Keep, and I'm like, I'm building a portfolio right now. Why not start looking around at jobs? And not to repeat everything, I don't want to, but yeah, I was looking at any and every game company, startup and big. And yeah, the qualifications are either you need to ship games, you need to have a bachelor's degree, some of them required master's degrees. I'm like, three AAA ship titles. I'm like, that's weeding out a lot of people. And I remember hearing from you, I think Michael brought it up, that you get hired for contract work, the game's done, you get laid off.
Yep.
So I mean, even just the other day, I was looking on everything. I was like, is there anything even like online kind of help desk thing I could, which would pretty much just be AI these days, but like anything relating to my degree, like, hey, I have an animation degree. I do some work at a game company, or anything I can do. So that's kind of why I messaged you in the first place. Like, I got frustrated. I was looking for an hour and a half, nothing popping up.
That's the thing that I think about a lot too, because I really, really want to get the studio to the point where it's like self-sustaining and everyone can just be like, you know, maybe on like a monthly stipend or some shit like that, you know, as contractors. But then I think, um, in general, the most valuable thing I can offer someone like you is to say, well, if you help me make this game, you could put it on your portfolio that you made a game. And
Which,
yeah,
yeah,
and then hopefully that'll make make you look better when you go to someone who can actually offer you what you deserve. But I would say this, that in in those things where they're saying like you need a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, minimum 5 years experience, that kind of stuff. I I know how that appears to someone who's just like looking for work, especially people who are just straight up unemployed and they're like, I'll do anything. And then you see that and it's super discouraging. My advice, and you can quote me, internet, is to fucking lie. And I bet you they don't check. And what's more important to everybody, if you find someone in the games industry that disagrees with me on this, they're probably an asshole. No one gives a fuck what your degree is, what it's in, how many years of experience you may or may not have. That can influence, maybe the decision at the end of the day, depending on who you're competing with. The question is, what can you do? What can you actually do? What have you done that proves to me that you can do what I'm going to pay you to do? And if you have the gift of gab, like if you can get into that first and second phase interview and just convince them that you're the guy for the job, no one gives a fuck if you have a master's degree or not. I don't give a fuck. I will never care about that. It's impressive. It's like, oh wow, you have a master's degree. What games have you made? I know a lot of people who have bachelor's degrees in game designs that have never made a fucking game in their life. You know, and
Yeah.
it's not. It doesn't do me any good. Like I know so many people who have. I walked into, for instance, like when the first time I walked into like the Slipgate office, and people are like, oh, everybody was new, had moved from different countries, and like, what did you do? How did you get into this? And there's so many people that were like, not in management positions who are like, "Oh, I've been in the industry for 16 years. I have this, I got my degree in this and that at uni." And it was just like the only job I could, find at the time, and it like seems like a really good opportunity. And then they're like, "How did you do it?" And I was like, "I didn't do any of that shit. I made a fucking stupid podcast." I ended up knowing a lot of indie devs. I came in through the Realms Deep thing, and then I talked to my way in. Like I literally like was in Denmark in 2021, riding in a Lamborghini with Fred on. Like he was like driving me back to our hotel or whatever, and he was just like, "What do you want to do?" Like I want to work with a guy like you who will just get shit done. But like, what in the games industry would you want to do? And so I just was like, "Well, I want to be a project manager. I want to be a producer, and I want to work in marketing." And he's like, "Yeah, but like, do you have any experience like doing that?" And I was like, well, not in the games industry, but I'm a staff sergeant in the Air Force. I'm pretty sure I can tell people what to do and get a project done. And he's like, gave me a shot. But it wasn't because I had a master's degree or a portfolio or any of that shit. It was just that I was able to convince someone to trust me that I could manage a team. And so my advice to anybody out there, if you're applying for jobs, do not just see the qualification you don't have and then give up and like don't even send in your shit. Just try it. And if they're the kind of people who sort it by algorithms and they don't even look, or they have so many that they can't even pay attention, you probably weren't going to get it anyway, or they're assholes who don't care about people. They just, they filter everything out based on that. Um, so you would literally be better off just like getting your foot in the door for the conversation. I've seen, I'll use Vince Steele professionally as an example. No actual experience in the games industry, no experience in marketing. Now he's working in marketing at Saber. But simply based on like he did a lot of work in marketing within the keep through Realms Deep. And then when it came time, it was like, hey, we really need to hire a brand guy, like somebody who can like manage a brand and like pretty versatile, can get shit done, all that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, dude, Vince, the guy that helped us with Realms Deep, he's looking for a job right now. They hired him, and they didn't look at his fucking, they're like, they didn't ask him about his, do you have a master's degree in marketing statistics or any of that shit. They were just like, well, we know we can trust you to do stuff because as a contractor, you did a lot of really great shit. And you clearly have a get it done attitude. So give him a shot. Boom. Now that went from being hired at 3D Realms for like a junior position to working at Saber in the marketing division over the course of a few years. So I just err on the side of like actually have the conversation before you just discount oh, I don't have a bachelor's degree, I don't have a master's degree, I don't have 6 years experience, maybe I only have 3. I don't care about that. I just care about what you can do. And honestly, if you have less than what I'm looking for, but can do the same job that someone with those qualifications would or could do, I could probably get away with paying you a bit less than I would have had to offer that person and more likely to hire you. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's
first
very,
piece of advice is
very
lie.
true.
Lie your way into
Advice lie.
lie.
Well, it's
Yeah.
it's actually kind of funny. Like, I at a very small scale, I feel kind of the same way. I'm like, hey, I can do textures, and now I'm the lead designer on this project. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I can also do 3D models. Like, you can? Like, yeah, I went to school for that. Like, I know how to do that.
Mhm.
Bought a freaking mic so I could make centipede sounds, apparently.
Yeah. We talk about you behind your back. Like we'll get angry at each other, but like, hey, don't distract him. Like I know that you like Kevin can do like blender shit, but like we need him on levels right now. So could you just shut up? And I'm like, I'm sorry. like, I'm like, my bad. But you're like really like you've become a bit of a Swiss Army knife where it's like, well, Kevin can do levels and he can do art and he could do textures and he could do fucking 3D models and all this kind of shit. And then this happens at scale. So at a small studio, it's relatively manageable. But I've seen this happen at scale, where you have I drew out a diagram. This is when I first arrived in Denmark because I had already kind of in my mind like realized this isn't the most well organized. And I'm not saying it was a disorganized company, but I mean I'm coming from the military, and then I'm very deeply confused about how people delegate tasks at a game studio. This is my first look at it. So I drew out like what I would call a chain of command. I don't really know what that is in the corporate world necessarily, but a chart. It's like boom, this person's in charge of these people, and these people report to this, that kind of thing. And what I realized, I'm not going to say his name or what he did, but one dude was doing on paper, being paid one person's salary, was effectively doing what I would consider to be 8 people's jobs. Like what should be 8 different people, each with their own department, was one person. And when you're scaling, when you're first, trying to get to that point where you can hire, more people to do that, that happens. And it's a normal part of doing business. But I was just like, if we could just take less stress off of this guy, like give him 4 jobs instead of 8, and then hire a couple more people to and manage those things, we would probably have a net better results across the entire studio, across the whole company. Not because he's not doing a great job, but just simply because like he's doing 8 jobs. And there were multiple. I've seen this many, many times, like multiple situations where you have like one person who's willing and able to do a lot of things, and you'll burn them out. Like they'll say yes to everything because they can and they want to. Maybe they need money, and then ultimately they get to a point where they've bit off more than they can chew, and then they burn out. I've done this. I have for sure. Me personally have definitely done that because I'm such a like I don't give a fuck if I have to like die for it. We're getting this mission accomplished, and then maybe that's something I need to discuss with the VA at some point. But yeah, uh, you come to a day when it's like, fuck, I just gotta like, I can't work for 2 weeks because I'm fucking literally having a mental breakdown from all the shit I've taken on. And as a manager, you have to be careful about that too. Um, so I guess with the point with that is it's great to be versatile, but it's also like once you're in the environment, it's very important to like have your own boundaries and be able to say either no or pay me more or and I'm gonna stick in my lane. Like you hired me as a level designer. Don't do this to me, but do it to everybody else. You hired me as a level designer. My contract says level designer. I know that you need me to do these other things, and I can do them, but there's that old parable, I guess, about like the welder, and they bring him in for a job interview. And they're like, well, let's see what you can weld. And he's like, goes over to one, chain or whatever, and he does like a half-ass shitty job. And then he's like, give me another chain. And then he does a perfect, pristine, greatest welding job you've ever seen. Or they're like, well, why would you do this one like that? And he's like, that's what I charge for $50,000 a year. And this is the one I do for $80,000 a year. This is the kind of work I do, depending on how much you pay me. So it's not just like yes, do your best every time. Of course, that is a matter. But once you have established like I'm doing this for a living, whether you hire me or not, or whether you keep me or not, that kind of thing, then you can really start to leverage yourself and be like, no, I need you to pay me more if I'm going to take on more responsibility. We're not there yet, I guess, in the beginning stages of looking for a job. But I mean, even at the point where you get to a studio and they make you that initial offer, I've personally been very crafty with this, I think. But you know, don't just take the first offer blindly. You know, do your research and to see like what does this sort of position typically pay? What should I expect? What do I need in order to spend 40 hours a week, maybe more? Often in the video games industry, often way more. Doing this as a job, and a lot of contracts will just say like overtime is expected, and then this salary takes that into consideration to avoid having to pay overtime hours.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that too. And
Mm.
looking at job postings is like you might be working upwards of 60 hours a week, and I'm like,
Yep.
dream job, but if I'm qualified, I would sacrifice some of that free time to do that.
In general, unless you are just going to be an independent contractor and set your own hours and decide how much you take on for yourself, if you want a job in the games industry, everybody listening, and you expect to have like a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 gig, go work, do something else. Even if they tell you that's what it's going to be, I recommend personally find something else to do. Because no matter what, eventually there will be a time when you have a deadline and some people, fucked off, didn't do their job or got laid off or money short, whatever. And, or a parent company or a client, whatever, like we need it by this time, no matter what, you will work more than 40 hours in a week. It's going to happen. If you can show me a game studio that never does that, and I will show you someone who's out of business. Promise.
Well, it scales just like any other industry. Like, say, if you were to be getting a management position at Walmart, I'm certain you'd be working 55, 60 hours a week easily.
That's why you're
So,
on
I mean,
salary.
yeah. So if you're looking at a big company, I'm not throwing shade at you, id Software. I love you. But if you were to apply at id Software
I
or
am. Fuck y'all.
wow.
Give me my license. I want licenses for all the old engines. I'll pay you for them, but until you let that happen, suck it. And Doom Eternal sucks. No, I'm just playing. I'm just kidding.
Heresy. Oh, like
Um,
even working there, I'm sure those people get super burned out, except for maybe some of the people who have been there since the beginning, which I
mm,
think is Tom Hall. If I'm correct. I may be wrong, but yeah, I mean, you said it best a while back in this conversation. Look for something small, and I'm actually really starting to believe in the keep with it's getting that same vibe from. I have the Masters of Doom on my shelf in front of me, where the small team of people came together,
mm.
made a game, and started something really awesome. So, I mean, I'm putting my heart into these games I'm working on right now, and I really hope they pay off. Be childhood dream come true.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of pivot into um, another aspect of how do I become a full time game dev. So I mean, if anybody wants to, the Thomas Brush, the guy that made Pinstripe and lots of other games, he on his website literally has like a course that he teaches. Like it's like a webinar kind of thing, but it's just like how do I become a full time game dev? And there's lots of ways to do that, but like his sort of approach to it, I took like the first part of it. I don't think I need the whole class, but I was just like, let's see what people are doing. What are folks teaching? And so his approach to it was literally like, basically how to make a demo so that you can get either grant money or a publisher to pick up a game. And then you can just take your payments while you work on the game until it's shipped, and then how to negotiate for revenue splits and like, you know, kind of what you should look for in a contract and all that kind of stuff. That it's very useful. But this is still technically being a contractor and not being an employee. But let's say that you were going to make a game, like you were going to make Pitter Patter the game, and that was your dream, and you need money in order to be able to quit your day job to do that full time. Then his sort of approach to like how do I become a full-time game dev is like and everything. It's like start a YouTube channel, you know, grow your social media community, all that sort of stuff. It's just way more involved than just make a game. And even when you decide to make a game, and like I could like just list off like hundreds and hundreds of people I know who have fallen into this trap of trying to make their dream game as their first game. Like the only thing they care about is just I want to make this, and I want it to have blackjack and hookers and, you know, poker in the back and all that kind of, you know, everything. Instead of just kind of like taking it iteratively. So if you look around at like indie devs who are genuinely very successful, there are a few edge cases, you know, like your Stardew Valley type things, but just base level, how do I become a full-time game dev? It's to have a high output rate. Basically like turn over good enough games to sell quickly, and they don't have to be the best game in the world. They just have to be enough that people will pay for them. And then once you have like David Szymanski, right, has like 15 games or something like that on Steam. And for years he was just doing that. Then he made Dusk. He finally had a hit, and now people buy Dusk and every other game he ever made all at once, all the time. And now anything he puts his name on is like all the Dusk people and all the people who know the rest of his work are interested in it because he built a brand around his name. He's not even like looking for a job at this point. I'm sure he's doing very well and kind of picks and chooses what he wants to do. But like, he's a great example. Airdorf is another great example. A lot of the people who end up at New Blood are going to be people who I would cite as like folks who are pretty damn smart about how they approach the indie games industry. They're not looking at it like I need to make a living off this. They're looking at it like just constantly outputting and building up a portfolio until eventually you get hit. If you go back and listen to Burning Bridges with Bridge Burner, a podcast that I used to produce, and hopefully it will come back at some point. Bridge Burner interviews John Romero, and within like the first 5 minutes of the conversation, Bridge is like, "Oh, let's talk about your early work. You know, like let's go back to like, you know, Wolfenstein and Doom and Quake." And John goes, "You know, Wolfenstein was like my 87th game." And that sunk in pretty hard. I'm like, you know, that's the way to do it. That's why he is who he is. Like, it wasn't like he just hit the ground running with the you know, a killer game from the jump. He made like 80 some odd games iteratively over a long period of time. And then, you know, then Commander Keen, then Wolfenstein 3D, then Doom 2, then Quake 1. And then, you know, and then never had to work again if he didn't want to. He did and still does, but he does not have to.
Yeah, I believe he's more of a passion creator at this point, with his company over in Ireland.
Yep.
I actually sent a resume out over there, hoping to get feedback. I haven't heard from him yet. No, it's been about a month. But yeah, that what you just said, that's actually holds true as far as I know to the children's book industry. My wife said that you usually don't start profiting until about the fourth or fifth book, and we're just on our third. And I keep on saying to myself, "Come on, Pitter Patter, pay the bills, pay the bills, pay the bills." So like, we have a whiteboard on our fridge that's got the name of the next 4 or 5 book titles she wants to write. I'm like, it'd be great to pump things out faster. It takes this last one took a year and a half. One of them took just under a year, and the first one took about a year to do. So I mean, you don't also when you're making games, you don't want to make something that's bad. You want to make something that's fun,
Mhm.
and something that you can turn around in quantity. Like, you have enough that people will be interested in your games, like, or your books.
And the thing is, once you on top of it just being like, don't see a profit until your fourth or fifth book or whatever. It's like, it's once people start to see your, like, literally like on a shelf or, in advertising, it's like, oh, it's a whole series. Like,
Yeah.
these are serious. This is not just a standalone thing or whatever. They take you more seriously. And then instead of, by the time you get to book 4, people aren't just going to buy book 4. They're going to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, then they're going to continue to buy them afterwards. And then you can be like, and here's the collection of books 1 through 5. And, and then after that, like the same way they do comic books,
Yeah.
you have your issue every month, and then, eventually you sell the trade paperback, and eventually you sell the compendium and the omnibus, etc. You're building a brand over time. And I think a lot of people really struggle with the bargaining with time part of this. Like, it's the chances of just like magically going from point A to point B in terms of like, I want to be full time in the games industry is actually pretty low. You have to be willing to, have very, very, very delayed gratification in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah, it's a process.
And I would also say, it, on top of everything that we've said so far, I forgot to mention this, and it's pretty substantial. It's also very unlikely you're going to be working on something that you personally are passionate about. In a lot of cases, you're as a hired hand, you are probably going to be helping other people who have money accomplish their dreams, or or not even their dreams. And in the worst case scenario, basically just pumping out some shit that no one really cares about, but it makes money because people keep buying it.
Oh, very true. Like you might go in there expecting to work on the next hit action game that you love, and then you're making a My Little Pony ripoff or something. Like you might not know what the project is. You could be told it's a first person shooter, but it's like a snowball fight or something. That actually sounds kind of fun.
There's not a lot that sucks for it. Like, on one hand, I'm just so grateful to be in the position that I'm in, to work in video games and get paid very well for it and all that kind of thing. And then it still sucks when someone comes to you with a project and they're like, look, I know it's not the best one. We're not really that passionate about it, but we kind of got to do a favor for the money kind of deal. And you're like, but it's crap. This is going to hurt. And they're like, well, sucks to suck. You're going to have to be in charge of that one. And I mean, that's with every job. You're never going to totally avoid that, but it's still, it doesn't really matter how much money you're making or how grateful you are to be in the position you're in. That still sucks. And so I would personally imagine, I have no intention of ever working for Epic, so I don't give a fuck. But I mean, like, if I were like really, like, I really wanted to be in the games industry and I'm super passionate, like in your case about like, Doom Engine stuff and like that kind of thing. And then I ended up being like a fucking artist on Fortnite, just pumping out fucking crap all day long. While that's a nice way to make a living, I feel like that's another thing to really consider is, does this make me happy? Do I actually want to spend my time doing this, or do I just think I want to be in the games industry? Because I feel like you can't really know that probably until you've done it. But like, ask yourself that question ahead of time. Like, do I just want to, do I just not like the situation I'm in and want to get out of it, and that looks like the light at the end of the tunnel? Or, is this actually what I want to spend my time doing? And what are you willing to compromise on?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've thought
'Cause,
about that quite a bit. Given the fact that my day job is literally putting boxes on shelves, but I
yeah.
coming with my background with the Doom community, like just using the engine was enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm all about that. Like, it wasn't the fact that I was working on a first person shooter or anything. It was like I know how to do geometry and what the engine can and cannot do for the most part, that made me be like, yeah, I want a part of this. So that's why I came over to Uber and you, and I was like, can I be a part of this team?
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to, I, I think I had like almost tried to make this transition and didn't, but thinking about the profitability of a project and how to scale a company. And I'm not going to claim to be some kind of business genius, but what I will say is that I was, from day one, extremely careful about scale, and I'm still delayed on, my initial estimate of how long it would take by a factor of years. So I'm just saying I was very, very careful to not scale too fast or to like take on way, way, way more than I could chew. And even that was not enough to protect us from, things being delayed. So when you go to put a game out on, say, Steam, like my goal is to ship a game, it's going to cost $10. I'm going to put it on Steam. First and foremost, Steam's going to make 30% of that, right? And then you're left with the rest. And you've got to divide that up between yourself and every single other person that you choose to work with on the way. Unless you dupe them into doing it for free or some shit, which I think is kind of fucked up. But I mean, if they agree to it, I don't know. That's between y'all. But it's really hard to make a profit on a video game simply because, let's say, it costs you time or money somewhere in the area of, man, an indie game. And I mean, an indie game can cost $250,000. That's a low budget. When you're talking about publishing budgets, like 100,000 to 250,000 is like your low end deals.
Yeah.
So you not only have to earn back $250,000 and do all the work over the course of years, then you have to also sell enough to make a profit from that and pay everyone equitably between you, the publisher, everybody. It's got to get their piece of that. And hopefully you make a profit on it. That's the game you're playing. In the world of very, very, very indie games, and I mean true indies, no publishers involved, like actual independent, if you can keep your budget really low, you can make a profit. Like if you can make a game for a couple grand and make $6,000 on that game, that's not that hard. I mean, you do the math. If you want to sell, let's just say your goal is you sell 10,000 copies, right? Which is not undoable. And you're making a simple game that you're going to charge $10 for it. You basically need to, sell enough copies of that game at that price to go over your very small, hopefully, budget to turn a profit. And the faster you can do it, the more likely you are to see a return on investment. And I feel like people don't really think that through a lot of the time when they're going to make an indie game, and they end up spending quite a lot of time and money, and so mostly time, in the realm of like hobbyists, indie developers. But I mean, potentially also money to try to make it happen. And then they don't think about, like, if I only make $6,000 for 6 years of work, like, is that really a way to make a living? No. Like what you needed to do was to, keep expenses. This is the same thing that they're doing at the corporate level, just with more time and more money. Expenses low, profits high. Turnaround rate fast. That's the way to do it.
I kind of think of that while I'm working on levels. I'm like, man, I really want to put my heart into this level and give it a lot of detail, but at the same time, I got to get that level done. Like, we need this game done. I'm looking at this lava world, like, wow, I just learned how to do slopes in a really cool way. I'm going through everything, and then I'll come to a part that's just started, and I'm be like, I gotta stop playing with slopes. Like, it looks fine. We got to finish this level. So, spending too much time on a project too. I mean, my capture flag thing for the ZDame community, I started it in 2007 or 8. I didn't like call it done saying it was finished until 2 years ago. That's stupid. Like, if I really wanted that project done, I could have done that within a year. But I mean, it
there's
was
a
a passion
median.
project. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that you could go on the internet and just start making Unity turnover shit. Like, a lot of people do that. I mean, I'm not saying make crap on purpose. There's got to be a median. Like, being a perfectionist is a terrible way to make money in the games industry or anything. Like, anytime where you're like time dependent, there's a balance between how much time do you have and how perfect do you want to be that equals money. And anything deviating from, on the left or right side of that is unacceptable. It won't work. So, like, Daikatana, our good pal John Romero, just got way in over his head trying to make something perfect, and what it resulted in was not the best game in the world, far delayed. It's just, you don't want that. So you gotta like, that's a big part of what on my end of things. What can we do very well in this amount of time for this amount of money?
Yeah.
And then plan on that. And then as with Stellar Valkyrie, I know a lot of people don't do this, and if you're not, I don't know how you make it happen. Maybe you've been successful without it. Make a Bible, like a document at the beginning where, like, at minimum, these things have to be done. And then if you and fucking Maria drive me insane with like, well, can we have a fucking centipede riding? And I'm like, you can. I'm for it.
And
It
then we
sounds
get,
really cool, but I need all of these other things to be the priority. Like, without the game itself, the centipede doesn't get shipped. Like,
but then we get sprite feedback, and it's all
mm,
like everything's good to go by the end of the week, and we're like, all right, it's going in there.
yeah, if you can do it and not sacrifice the important details first, like don't deviate from the plan. I mean, if you have to pivot, like if something doesn't work, that's something that can be discussed. But I mean, the core game needs to be defined and not negotiable to a large degree before you even start. Like, so many folks are like it took us just our own, like, one big roadblock we ran into is it took us forever to make the first level because we were just like basically like designing all of the gameplay around like what can we do in this first level. And it was like, I wanted all the mechanics in place first and foremost. Like, I want basically every system essentially to work and all that kind of stuff before we started focusing on content. But then you end up in these situations where you're like, oh, you've spent 2 years on one level. It's like, that doesn't feel good. So you want to kind of like, I would always recommend make something that's you can sort of test every mechanic in, and then block out your levels based on what can be done. Because what you don't want to do is be at like level 6 of a game or something like that, and then come up with a new idea for a new mechanic, and then be like, oh, can we do that? And then it's like, well, first of all, like, pacing wise, why does that only happen here? You see that a lot in a lot of AAA games because they have this problem. And versus like, do you know what you can or are able to do, make it fun and functional and everything early on, and then kind of base your level design around that. And
Yeah.
I won't lie, we've made some mistakes around that, like, for sure. But it's definitely advice to be given to people. Like, just try to make sure you know what the game at its core does, and how it functions before you just get like way deep into content, so to speak.
It's very true. I mean, even in my own projects, I'd be like, oh, I learned how to do this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
granted, I was still learning how to use the Doom engine when I was like 17, 18 years old. But then I'd like go back to the first level I had made, and I'm like, oh, I'm adding all these fun doors or something to it. And then the level turns into something completely different by the end of the project. So, yeah, if you already know how to use the engine and the software and everything, make sure you have an idea all written down, your Bible written down, follow that. And then if you have a fun quirk you want to throw in there, then yeah, by all means you can throw that in there. But make sure you have the core components done.
Yeah, feature creep is bad. It hurts. It's, to be completely frank, and not to throw anybody under the bus, or whatever. But that's what happened with Phantom Fury. You're listening to KEEP in the Keep. If you love this show and you love supporting indie video games, please take a moment to check out In the Keep's upcoming Stellar Valkyrie. Built in the GZ Doom engine, this retro first-person shooter puts you in the universe of space bird bounty hunter Falco, who is on a mission to save his ex-girlfriend from the evil Black Star cult. Just type birdgame.space, that's BIRD game.space, into your browser. Hit enter, smash the wishlist button, and stay tuned. I was like looking back on it now, I don't have any qualms about saying it. It is what it is. It's not the best game in the world, but it's a game and you can play it. It's pretty decent. But like me on the production end and the marketing end, like looking at that project, I was constantly like annoyed with okay, we we have all these different crazy weapons and shit and like all these amazing grandeur ideas of what to do, and then something as fundamental as like being able to see your reflection in the mirror wasn't really even brought up until like the very end of production, and that's a result of going crazy with all the different features you want to have, and then you don't have like a defined like the core, the very bare minimum viable product defined from the jump. And that that's something that I think everybody creative goes through. It's not a diss on anyone. It's just like something a lesson to be learned in the postmortem of something like that is like, don't just think that every crazy idea you have along the way needs to be thrown in immediately and ignore the very important things at the beginning. And with indie devs, you mentioned you brought up like kind of like learning how to develop in the Doom engine. One of the fun things about it is that unless you're doing like serious gameplay mods, you kind of know what can be done. Like the physics, the mechanics of how the game is going to work are there. So if you're just making like a reskin or a map pack, that kind of thing, you don't have to think about what are the potential things I could do gameplay wise. It's more like just that's all defined for me. I just need to make a level that works for that. So that's a great way, I think, for level designers, especially to figure out how that process works for them. But on the mechanics side, someone's already done. John Carmack did that for you, 35 years ago or whatever the hell. Yeah. And that's another thing about just like genres too, like picking your genre. Like if you're going to make a boomer shooter, it's pretty straightforward. You have other than coming up with your gimmick that makes your game special and stand out amongst all the other hundreds of boomer shooters out there, it's like the type of game you're making is pretty well defined. If you're going to make a dungeon crawler, like you don't have to reinvent the wheel to make a dungeon crawler. But if you're trying to do something different, then you really got to be careful about throwing everything that comes to mind at the wall and seeing what sticks, because oftentimes what sticks isn't it might work in that instance but not for the overall game.
Yeah,
and take too long.
What I feel about Stella Valkyrie is like it's kind of a safe zone for us picking boomer shooter, and everybody who's working on it, I think has worked on a boomer shooter, so we already know what we're going to be doing. Like we know how everything works, and yeah, it just kind of feels right. Like we're hitting the ground running.
Unfortunately, it's a genre I'm like all too familiar with. Like I know this genre in and out, unfortunately, because I kind of wish I'd spent some time on other things. I am now. Like I barely play shooters anymore. Honestly, and it's not because I hate them. It's just like I got burnt out like for years and years and years. That was all on my plate all the time. So I'm trying to like branch out into. I got into RTS games and like I've always loved like party-based RPGs and stuff like that. But even just like getting people to like talk me into trying stuff that I wouldn't ordinarily try, like just not because I necessarily wanted to make other types of games, but just to like see what else is out there. Because it's really easy to get like tunnel vision of like this is what a game is, and then when you go to like if you go to like EGX in London or that kind of thing, and just walk around like the indie labs and stuff and see what people are doing, and get a eye opening. Like, oh my God, there's so many things that could happen in the world of video games that I never even think about because I'm so stuck in my own little island of Doomland or whatever. Can be really, really good and also bring a lot to the table, when you're talking about what do I want to do, even if you're still going to make a boomer shooter, like what can I take? What lessons can I learn from what other people are doing with other genres? And I think we've done that quite a bit with Stellar Valkyrie. Like it's it categorically will fall under the boomer shooter, flag in a lot of ways, but I have tried for it to not be a Doom clone, like just another Doom mod that's being charged money for or whatever. And lots of people
I
have
don't
been
think we're
really,
that.
I can't stand it. Like I just go play, if I'm gonna make a Doom mod and then charge you money for it, why don't you just go on, Zandronum or whatever and just go on the forums and just download any of the bajillions of other things that do that already for you. If you just want to play Doom but updated, play Brutal Doom with any map pack in the world you want, or play like Russian Overkill, my all-time favorite mod, like whatever. But if you want to do something different, like in our case, I want like platformer elements. I want it to be more like it still is a shooter and it's still first person, but like more like playing a Nintendo game than like just playing a Doom mod. That is the dream. That it would be something that like a kid can pick up and play. Like anyone from like 6 to 60 would enjoy playing it.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting not having like curse words and adult content because we've found so many different ways around it. So many ways to avoid.
We definitely have.
It's actually it's like when the rappers that don't cuss, it's like actually harder to do. Same thing. Like it is like you have to be more creative, not to just throw the easy, the low hanging fruit at the wall every time.
I think our game definitely stands out from the other boomer shooters that are out there right now. There are a lot of good ones out right now, but whenever I do a playthrough, like a test for my levels while I'm working on them, I just look at it and I'm like, when that gets implemented and that gets implemented and we get to this boss area, this is going to get chuckles out of people. Like, this is going to be fun. Even our last play test, I was laughing so hard at what Michael had thrown in there just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, man.
I think I had to turn my mic off for a second.
So tell me about what it's like, with your epilepsy and shit. What are the struggles and trials of that? Because on our end, I hear people. I'm not putting anybody down, but like make every excuse in the world not to, like I can't work, I can't do this, all that kind of shit. Like I'm disabled, and I'm like, dude, this guy that works with me literally like has like 3 seizures every day and still fucking goes to his day job, and then when he gets off, he comes and helps us do like a lot of amazing things and never makes excuses. So what's theirs? And yeah, what drives you? What is it? Your name?
Um, so there, what the research I've done, there are so many types of epilepsy out there, and I feel like mine's not that severe. I mean, I don't know what it looks like from the outside perspective because I pretty much just go unconscious and then I'm back. And I have no idea how long I was out. I don't know what I did during that time. There are sometimes I just have a staring spell, like someone deep in thought. And then there are other times where I will be in one room and then I'll be in another room. Or I'll be like cooking dinner or cooking my breakfast in the morning, rather, and will have made myself tea as opposed to coffee or something dumb like that. But for me, the struggles are the big one's transportation. And I mean, I'm stuck at a day job that I don't like. I obviously am trying to get out of it. And
What's the name of the
then
company? I'm just playing. Don't.
bullshit.
Bullshit.
Black Star.
Art.
Black Star.
Yeah. The Black Star Corporation. Yeah, that's
Yes.
good.
Bullshit
Good.
Corp.
We should get merch for that. Like, we should get Black Star core merch. I'm gonna make Maria do that right now. Keep talking.
um, the troubles is really understanding how limited I am after this diagnosis. Because beforehand, I had been hired back in this company And the only thing that had changed since was I just need my wife to drive me. But now it's thinking of the what ifs. Like, what if I were to get laid off? What if they fire me or something?
Hmm.
Um, my job options are so limited. I I have been working in automotive for 10 years. I was um I mean, I can't drive. So right there, half the jobs in the industry I can't do. Another one that I did for 4 years was I was a lube tech. I
Oh,
I can't operate heavy machinery or it, I couldn't work on cars again if I wanted to. I probably can use a push mower in my yard or a gas mower in my lawn. I have to use a push mower. Um, I keep on getting asked by my wife to do projects for like building a garden bed in our backyard. Like I can't use a miter saw. There are so many restrictions on that, and that's the hardest part for me. Um, Going back to what I said about feeling like it's not that bad for me is when I was in the hospital over Thanksgiving, um, I could see into the person's room across the hall, kind of diagonally from me. This poor old guy was shaking all the time. That's where I'm like, compared to me, I have like these little staring spells for up to half a minute, maybe twice a day. But I'm like, that that seems more severe than what I have. But the restrictions are all the same on all of us. So I mean, even though I stare off blankly and come back, I'm still restricted in the same way as everybody else with my condition.
yeah. I mean, it's weird. It's like a rough thing. One of the things that I enjoyed, or at least observed a lot, in Denmark, is that they are far more accommodating of these sorts of things when it comes to employment. Because in America, it is a quote more business friendly country, whereas over there are lots of rules and restrictions and and systems in place so that, like, let's say you are disabled and you can only work for 20 hours a week, then they'll just, like, the government will like help you find a company that basically like you can do that, and then they'll cover the rest of your salary as if you were full time based on that. And then you're essentially, you basically have job insurance. Like, you pay obviously a shitload in taxes and insurances and things like that, but it's like when you find yourself unemployed or unable to work full time, they cover it, and then it's just with the guarantee that whenever you're able again, or if not, whatever, then that gets paid back into the system, and sort of everyone's participating in that whole thing. It's very, very much a socialist thing. But what you end up with is, there are people, in the office, whatever the hell, that just, oh, and that's their situation, and everyone just accepts it as it is. Which is not necessarily the most productive thing in the world. Um, as from the American point of view, it's just like, well, sorry, I just can't work with you because you can't do the whatever it is that they need. And obviously, you're not going to be an underwater welder. Like, there's no chance of that with your situation. But with what we're doing, I'm like, shit. Yeah, I don't think anyone in our Discord for the game dev channel could even, if I saw someone being like faulting someone else for having an issue like that, or a mental health issue or whatever. I'm like, "Well, none of us have any room to talk." Like, I have missed a lot of time just on mental health shit alone, like, personally. I'm still talking with the VA, and all kinds of stuff. There's just things that I definitely see as like an impediment to myself, even if other people look at me and think like, "Oh, you're really productive." I'm like, I feel like I could be doing a lot more a lot of the time, and that is a self, consuming, a snake biting its own tail sort of thing, that I have to deal with. But I just think that it's really impressive how productive you are given the restrictions that, I think a lot of people would just, claim disability and not work, or have every excuse not to do, and you don't seem to make any excuses for yourself at all. It's very admirable.
Thank
It
you.
it almost makes you more desirable. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I want to keep you around just so I can be, if someone else complains, I'll be like, yeah, Kevin's not complaining.
Well, the way I look at it is I do this stupid job or I go to work and I put boxes on shelves in the morning, but then I get to come home and I get to work on a game.
Mhm.
Like, even though my commission is X dollars, like, I'm still enjoying this. This is something I like to do. It's something I've always liked to do. So, yeah, honestly, there are some, this is me talking to my boss. Honestly, there are some days where I'm like, especially over the holidays this last year, I was kind of like, I'm not doing any fucking work till the second. Like, I don't feel like it. Like, even our meeting is like, we're not doing a meeting this week. I'm like, are you sure? Like,
Yeah.
even talk about anything? And you're like, hey, somebody go on there. I can't guarantee anybody's going to be there, but if you want to sit there. But no, for me, it's like I get to sit down and I get to do what I love doing all throughout my teens and most of my 20s. And for me, it's therapeutic. So to see these levels come to life and I'm getting some mock textures in there. And then I say, like, hey, Maria, Jay, when you guys have time, like, I would like some of these. And then sometimes I get the same thought of Maria. Like, I'll be like, hey, can I get a few textures for this level that look like this? And then the next day there's like 30 textures, and I'm like, holy, how much time do you have? Like, that's amazing. But I mean, when it comes to me, I've always been a sit down and work on a game with a Doom engine, and it's just a pastime. It's a hobby. I just love doing it. So I'll get sucked into it for on a weekend. I get sucked into that for 7 hours sometimes. I just love doing it.
Yeah, I find that there's some wisdom to it. Like a lot of people refuse to turn their hobby into a job for that reason. It's like because when it becomes a job, it becomes a job. In my case, I definitely like. I wouldn't say that I've lost my love for gaming or making games or anything like that, but I definitely went through a very long period where it was like after I got home at the end of the day, the very last thing in the world I wanted to do was sit in front of a computer and fuck with video games. Like, whereas when I was in the military, I would like work a 12-hour shift and then get home and like all I want to do is keep doing in the keep stuff or or play this new game that I'm supposed to be doing a podcast about or whatever. And it was like, all I didn't care if I had to be awake for. I was also younger, like I don't care if I have to be awake for 3 days. Like I've got work to do. There's it's all this big adventure, but it's because it was just genuinely like my passion project and not like how I was making a living. Even now, I think I've dialed back a lot more. I mean, I have family to deal with. Like I've got the baby on the way and everything, so I'm a little bit more like I try to like set boundaries for myself, honestly, because I'll work. I'll be at this desk until 3 a.m. if I don't force myself to just go like, okay, it's 10:30. Go sit down. I'm gonna read until I'm tired. I'm gonna have a cup of tea. Cut off the coffee at 5 p.m. or whatever. And I'm honestly terribly undisciplined with like sleep schedules. Like I'm very much, I guess you could call me a workaholic in a way. Like if there's a problem that needs to be solved, I will not sleep until it's solved. And I'm trying to get better at reminding myself that like it'll still be there tomorrow. Like you don't have to pull an all nighter right now. But that's also like I think just years of working on shift work and also just dealing with the military where it's like there is no negotiating. There is no like this problem will be solved tomorrow or passing the buck along. It's like, no, this has to be done. This is very, very important. Um, Now it's not that dire. And I think I'm still, even years later, kind of transitioning out of that mindset. But in the, to a certain degree, like I take this company very, very seriously. Like this is now the only thing that I do is, this podcast and our studio. And of course, like our contract work, like we do that ourselves. Like I'm pimping out my, marketing services or whatever to whatever developers that, want to work with us. As long as it's a good fit and, fits my schedule, I can do that. But this is how I make my living now. It's not a side hustle anymore. And the enthusiasm level does actually go down when it becomes your job. It becomes for money. Uh, I think if you can find something that you literally don't have that effect with, you really hit the gold mine. Like that's the best it's going to be.
Oh yeah. I've always stuck to, I don't know if I heard this somewhere, if I made it up on my own, but if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. That's
Yeah,
the way I look at it.
yeah. I think you still work. There are days when you'd feel like you're like, oh, I'm just so happy that and look what we accomplished. And then there's days where it's like, I don't want to do this. Like I tell you what, I do not want to sit down once a month and do y'all's payroll and shit. Like I don't. I want to hire someone to do that for me. I, it has to be done. Obviously, like every year, like I do have to file the taxes and pay those prices and shit. But like it's it's the sacrifice I have to make in order to be able to do this.
Yeah.
As the leader of a business, you do sort of have to make a lot of sacrifices for the sake of the whole. Like there are things that I would like to do game wise that I'm like, well, I can't do that and, reasonably compensate everyone for the work that we're asking them to do and also like doing. And I can't. There are lots of games I would like to be working on, but I'm like, hey, like, fuck, you know, Maria's house got fucking crushed by a tree, and so like we're gonna probably lose some productivity in that time frame. And I could, I know bosses are gonna be like, well, we have to move on, and I'm like, no, I mean, like, let's just be patient. And I try to be that way as much as possible. I know there's a certain point when you can't, you know, you like the needs of the many outweigh the one, but as long as there's a way we can make it work for everyone and with a small group it's pretty doable. That's what I want to be. I don't like the idea of having like a 80-person game studio when everything's like super, it has to be completely organized and like you just people get treated like numbers. It's like a Dunbar's number thing. And I remember as I saw Slipgate and 3D Realms scaling, I knew that that would be something they ran into because when you go from 15 people who can all have a conversation in a room together versus like 200 people, I was like, telling leadership, like, once you get to about 120 people, you're not going to know everybody's name. You're not going to know what they had for breakfast anymore. You're not going to know what they do for their hobbies. It's not like it's not a fault on you. It's just like you have to delegate responsibility of leadership to people who can have that personal relationship with the folks that work with. So me as a producer, when I was working on Kingpin, we talked about that a bit in the conversation. Like Robert had, a situation where his daughter was very ill and he had to take time off. Um, and I liked that I was on the ground level with those folks so that I could make sure that we were able to accommodate that, as opposed to, the guy at the corporate level doesn't know what the hell's going on with you. And, if you can't get that time to have that conversation or whatever, and you have to run and jet and go deal with something real life that affects you and not the whole company, um, you know, there's a lot to be said for just HR departments. I think in America we tend to think of HR as like the people who are gonna, oh, don't say that or whatever because you might offend somebody. But in general, I mean the folks who are looking out for the people on the ground, that's a very important thing. In the military, it's a first sergeant usually, or your base level supervisor. But having a real human connection with the folks you work with, I need that. I can't stand to be like just a number in a system or a cog in a wheel.
That's I'm not going to go too far into it,
Mhm.
but what I'm dealing with at my current job, I went up to HR to get I had to ask for a copy of the handbook. Because with my epilepsy disorder, I am guaranteed by law, federal and state, that I can take days off work unpaid due to my condition. It's happened 2 times, 3 times, including that's 3 times. One time I had a seizure and then took my medicine again, so I OD'd on my medications. So I had to stay home for monitoring.
Mm.
And then 2 days I had seizures, and I was like, these were worse ones. I should stay home in case I get a migraine or get incredibly tired and can't do my job because it affects the brain weird.
Right.
But this company is so big that I'm like, our dealership is like the 45th dealership they bought in my area. So these people are based out of a different state. And I don't think these guys even know what the state laws are here. It's it's ridiculous. So I mean, my problem is I may need to have a day off here and there intermittently with FMLA, but I can't take them off
Yeah.
unpaid. They want me to use my PTO first, which I haven't accrued because it's the beginning of the year. So I'm in a little tentative battle with HR at a different location, I think is in the state that I'm in, trying to get that figured out. So yeah, it's really what I like about it in the Keep is that we're so small. We all know each other's names. And when I talk to people about the game company I'm working at, I'm like, oh, where do you work at? I'm like, oh, we have people all over the place. Like, guys, and we got a guy in Korea, we got a guy in Alabama, Netherlands. I'm here, and I think another person's in Tennessee. And they're like, wow, how does that work? We all meet online.
Yeah. It's actually, it does at a scale become a real problem, even at our scale, right? Like just like scheduling something that Jay can make it to, like
Yeah.
we have a meeting here that's at like a normal time in the afternoon or whatever, and it's like 1 or 3 a.m. or some shit for him. And we make it work because again, it's a small group. But I've had projects where it's like, the project is based in Europe, and then like the company hired someone in New Zealand, and they're exactly 12 hours opposite of Europe. So it's
Ugh.
like if we have a noon meeting, it's at midnight for him, etc. And and the way that they looked at it was sort of like, well, as a contractor, that's what he agreed to. That's what he wants to do. That's what he wants to do. And I get that. Like, I get that. But I feel like a lot, like, again, the huge problem is that people say yes to shit when they ought not say yes. Like, it's the contractor does have the right to decide, what they want to do with their life. But also, I think it's on the employer to a degree to, tell people, like, nah, I don't. I know that you seem confident in everything, but I don't think that you really want what you think you want right now. Right.
It's like
And
the same thing as the kids who want to be in a rock band, tour the
Mhm.
world, and then like most of those bands, they look like they're having fun, but that job sucks.
Oh, the reason why they're drinking and doing drugs all the time is because they
Yeah,
hate themselves.
they
Right.
never
They
get to
hate their
see their
life.
family. They're on the road all the time.
Yeah,
Think
they're
they go to fun
cheating on their
places? Yeah,
wives.
but they're not going to be touring them. They're
Yeah.
literally there to do their job and then leave.
It's it's pretty dark actually. And yeah, your Justin Biebers of the world and your pop stars and everything. Yeah, they look happy on stage, but that's all a performance. And it's really, really tough.
Yeah.
You're never sleeping properly because you're always changing time zones like every day. Um,
Yeah.
and as you see the musicians as they get older, like really good bands, like they'll, like we're just going to do an East Coast tour because we'll be in one time zone the whole time. We can make it to the next place, over the course of a week in a bus. It's cheaper, I can bring the family on the road in the bus, like that kind of stuff, or whatever. Or, like I'm only going to tour during the summer when my kids are off school. That
Yeah.
kind
Or you see like there'll be an artist that's only playing in the UK,
Yep.
and there'll be another one that's only touring in North and South America because the time zones line up and they can just
Yeah. You ever seen that Iron Maiden
emulate they're all in
documentary,
one country. Yeah.
Flight 666 or whatever? They do a world tour, but like literally Bruce Dickinson is the pilot. Like he's flying like a 737 or whatever with all the band's gear on it all around the world. Like it's pretty interesting. But that was his way of dealing with it. It's like, well, if I just be a pilot and get my own airplane, like it saves us a lot of effort and a lot of hassle. We could do a world tour and we could do it like over the course of these months or whatever, and it would cuts costs. I'm like, shit, that's pretty smart and really cool. And they made a documentary about it, and they monetized that documentary. Like they literally, basically, it paid probably the documentary. It probably paid for itself. Just very, very smart, man. I love that sort of thing. It's something I've been talking about a lot lately is like multimedia franchises. Like my friend was asking me like, how does a Pokemon happen? I'm like, I mean, like how does or like Kiss, like that sort of thing. And I'm like, you just if as long as you have a brand people like, you can put that shit on everything. Like I want to have like Falco lunch boxes, you know. I'm not sure if this is going to be the IP that does that, but I mean, like if you get a hit that people vibe with. And, look at Among Us and Minecraft, that kind of thing. It's like Minecraft doesn't make its money off people buying Minecraft. They make their money off selling fucking merchandise.
Yeah.
You know. And same thing with Kiss. Same thing with Star Wars. Great example. Star Wars, the movies themselves, were the original trilogy, especially the first movie. It was like, you spent way too much money and way too much time on this, but through merchandise sales and through like licensing it to book companies and all that kind of shit, you make all your money back in a different way.
Oh yeah.
So I try to always think like super open minded about that. I was telling you a couple weeks ago about like, I met with this book company. They were trying to get me to like write a book, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I definitely want to hear how you do it. How's this whole industry business work? And yeah, it's you were saying earlier, it's a very interesting way to make a living, and there's so many logistics involved in a physical book. I mean, forget
Oh
about
yeah.
Kindle and all that kind of shit.
Oh yeah. You'd have to take it to like a publisher and everything and get approved, and that's the old way of doing it, as far as I know. Now it's
e-
just go online and do it through Kindle.
Even if you wanna like forget about all this, you just say you want like Kevin's bookstore, you have to stock the store. And in
Yeah.
order to be relevant, you have to constantly be buying new books. And guess what? The books that you don't sell have to go somewhere. And they
Yep.
cost money too. And storage costs money. Space costs money. Like, this is the old Blockbuster. When someone first opens a Blockbuster, all the movies are like facing outward, so that you can see them. And then, in a couple of months, they're all turned to the side to save shelf space. And yeah, then like then every after a movie's gone through its rental phase, it's like, okay, well, now you have to sell them for $10 and put them in the bargain bin, and like they're worthless after like a certain amount of time. So it's like what seemed to a lot of people like a really lucrative business, like, oh yeah, Blockbuster, open get your Blockbuster franchise, and then you can basically just have it pays for itself really quickly and all that kind of thing. But then what they would forget about is storage. That's what killed them. And it's the same thing with bookstores. And then getting transporting books around, like, you have to have trucks and shit. Like there's all these logistics involved. Grocery stores and restaurants is like the hardest thing ever to make a living at, because your shit perishes. Like this, not only do you have the shelving problem, but you also have the problem of like, and it goes bad after a certain amount of time. And if you have
Yep.
to be very specific about like how much milk do you buy versus how much do you expect to sell, still make a profit before it goes bad. And then once it goes bad, you just have to throw that shit away.
Depressing thinking of all the chocolate milk and ice cream that they had chuck out.
It's rough. And it's 100% true. I had a friend who, he did a lot of like charity work, and part of that was like working with the food bank. And he would go around to the local grocery stores and just take everything that they had that they couldn't sell to the food bank. And then
Mm.
what the food bank can accept, as far as like non-perishable stuff, a lot of what the grocery store gets rid of just goes straight to the fucking trash can. And
Yep.
not even because it's actually bad, just because like there's a law in place where it's like, well, after this amount of time, even if it's not gone spoiled or whatever the fuck, you can't sell it and you can't give it
Yeah.
away. So there's restaurants, the amount of food that gets thrown away in the dumpster behind a restaurant every single day is astounding. And then there's people starving to death.
What a wonderful world.
Yeah. It's really, really tough. Like I do not envy anybody who's in the food service or grocery business, just because of how hard it is to make a profit effectively doing that.
Yeah. I often think about shrink like that when I go downstairs. Um I've been collecting video games since I was a kid. I've never, except for once, I rage quit a game and I went and returned it.
Mm.
But I've never gotten rid of a video game, and I have pretty massive video game collection in my basement. And I look at it every once in a while. I'm like, I wonder if I could open a store. And then that everything you just said goes through my brain. I'm like, I'd have to find a place to keep it. If something gets sold and I promise someone it'd be on the shelf the next day, I'd have to go buy it. There's all the taxes. There's the fees of like renting a physical place. It's it's ridiculous, but eh, eh, you know, to each their own. If you want to try it, go for it. But
I uh I think it's like it's the same thing with the games industry. Everything I was just saying about Blockbuster, like running a game store. You know, you have to always have like the newest, greatest shit. Um, I, there's also a huge difference kind of between like a retro game store, you know, that's basically like a flea market of games and stuff like that, versus if you're running a store that's supposed to stock the newest games and shit. You you constantly have to be buying more and more copies of shit, and like
mhm.
it's you run out of storage space and all that kind of stuff. But also like choosing what to carry. And usually this happens with the bigger corporations is like they just have a deal with like certain publishers and distributors and that's kind of thing. But like, you know, what you have to like be predictive about what are people going to buy. And that is exactly why huge franchises like FIFA, NFL, Madden, you know, like Call of Duty are always on the store shelves. And it's not like they're not popular because they're particularly good. They're popular because they're a safe gamble for the market, like on the
Yeah.
marketing end. That's exactly what it is. And so you're just incentivized to keep having that. So if you're a kid and you live in like bumfuck nowhere, 15, 20 years ago before like everybody was buying their games on the internet, you'd have to walk into the store and like whatever's on the shelf. And chances are whatever's on the shelf is what they think, you know, it's easy to obtain, pay a low price for, and reasonably assume people will buy. So like it's not likely unless you had one of those cool game stores with like a really cool dude like you or me who's like, oh man, yeah, we got a hold of this. Like, forget about all that shit over there. Like, this is what you want. You know, if you don't have that, then you were just gonna end up like, well, I guess I'm playing Call of Duty. And like and there's no way around it. You don't unless you're going to order your games out of the Sears catalog, and then you don't get the chance to play them or rent them, and you know figure out do you like them or not, and all that kind of thing. It's rough. Going back to like John Romero's day, this motherfucker was like typing out the code
Oh yeah.
small games, mailing that shit snail mail to a magazine. Then the magazine would print that code on a paper in their magazine. Motherfucker would have to sit down, type that shit out themselves on their computer, hit enter, and then hope they didn't make any mistakes. And that's how you played a video game. Now, if your game, you know, doesn't have a immediate action right as soon as you launch it on Steam after a 30-second download on a fucking gigabyte internet, you're not competing. It's insane. It's so wild how much that's changed just in our lifetimes. I mean, you're older than I am, fucking grandpa. So
Kids. No, when I was a kid, it was the NES was still big, and I remember just I still have our first game for it, Mega Man 6, but I remember looking at that and thinking, this is awesome. And that's honestly where my love for gaming started. That and our original Game Boy with the three shades of green. Like
mhm.
this is, yeah, I always found things I could control on screen, or even like pinball machines. Like it's very, I always find it very interesting, and to be able to make whatever comes to mind in a virtual world, like within the Doom engine, is amazing to be able to do that. That's kind of where I got stuck. I mean, not stuck. I mean, I love doing it, but where I got pulled into doing this, it's if it weren't for me playing the NES as a kid or again the Game Boy, I my life wouldn't be where it is today.
Right.
To be blunt about it.
No, I feel you on that, man. I remember like my mom always tells me the story like when she was I was really little, but she basically had to be in a physical altercation in Walmart on Black Friday for a Game Boy Color for for my Christmas. Like it's just she'd gotten like the last one off the shelf, and then like some lady comes up, tries to snatch it out of her hand. She's like, "Oh hell no, nah, bitch!" Like my baby's playing the Game Boy Color this year, not yours. But now you just order that shit on Amazon or whatever, or
Yeah.
all delivered straight to your house. Pre-order. Um, But it just comes with a whole new list of challenges because, like, it used to be is like the challenge was to get it on the shelf in a large store, and now the challenge is everything's on the same store, and you got to get featured on the front page or get the algorithm to pick it up or whatever. And like, yeah, and there's a bajillion other things just like what you're making that you have to compete with and stuff. It's pretty rough. And finding a niche and even selecting a niche that is not so niche that nobody cares about it. I figured that out very quickly that boomer shooters are popular with about 10,000 people on Earth.
And we all know each other.
And we all know each other. We're all LinkedIn. We all know somebody who knows somebody. And it's like if you're gonna make a boomer shooter, that's your whole audience. That's it. That 10,000 is good, for a small living, but it's not gonna make you a bajillion dollars. So like when I started to see publishers jump onto the boomer shooter craze, I'm like, that's not gonna do well. And you have occasionally you have like an ultra kill that like is on its surface a boomer shooter, but like has so much. It's popular not with boomer shooter people, but with.
That's so funny you bring that one up because
Yeah.
that one's on my wish list. But every time it goes on sale, I look at it like that doesn't really look like a boomer shooter.
It's more like a Devil May Cry style. It's very very good. It's amazing, but it's very popular and sells very well. But it's because it's not just popular with boomer shooter people. It's popular with gamers in general. You're listening to KEEP in the Keep. Whatever happened to the good old days when computer role-playing games spent more time telling great stories than stressing you out with season passes and needless grinding? Call of Seregnar is our effort to bring back the best in RPGs. Play in the immersive world as two friends adventure into a murder mystery that lands them in the middle of a battle between gods. Head over to callofseregnar.com. That's call of SAREGNAR.com for more info, and be sure to wishlist on Steam. And
Yeah.
that's the goal. That's what you want if you want to make a big hit. It's like, you don't like, well, how come everybody doesn't listen to fucking, this underground death metal band that I like? And it's like, well,
Because they're all listening to Metallica.
right. And then people get mad at Metallica for putting out something that lots of people like. And it's like, well, I mean, if you want to make money, you kind of need a lot of people to like what you're selling.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's harder to make music. It is more difficult to make music that is universally liked, or art in general that like lots and lots of people are going to like. And for the sake of artistic integrity, you kind of have to find a balance between what can I actually do and make a living, and also maintain, not become Nickelback. Yeah, or like somewhere in between is probably what's best for you in the long-term mental health and financial, department. But that's a good transition, like, cause you're one of those people that only listens to like weird, obscure music. What are you listening to these days?
Omni Christ.
Omnichrist. Is this a black metal band, I'm assuming?
No, what would they be listed as? They're kind of new metal.
Mhm.
See, what was it say? Combi Christ.
Combi Christ.
Combi Christ is, let me the overview of this. Bigger is an American agrotech industrial metal band.
Yeah.
They're not too obscure. They're, I mean, I'm pretty obscure, I guess. So some people may have heard of them.
It's an interesting thing about, music in the same way it is with games, that you have all these labels, that you have to like label your band. Like just you and me, like just imagine someone listening to this who's not into like metal. Maybe they do have Metallica records and they have like maybe, stuff like that. Maybe like Five Finger Death Punch stuff, but they're not like into metal, And then you just said they're new metal, industrial, all that shit you just said is nonsense. But the thing is, you like there's so many bands that just like niche themselves into oblivion with labels like that. And then occasionally you have ones that like for whatever reason their music just transcends the genre. You know, it's like they're not just popular with speed metal fans. They're suddenly like they're popular with everyone. Like U2, one of the biggest rock bands of all time. If you go back and listen to the first like few U2 records, they're like a niche ass post punk band. Like they sound more like Joy Division or something like that than they do like what now when you hear U2, you hear popular soft rock music. But that's not because popular soft rock music is a genre. It's because what became popular by accident was this weird post punk band. And the same with like the Beatles and stuff like that too. You know, like the Beatles were playing rock and roll, which was not necessarily the most popular thing at the moment that they did it. It was just like a niche thing with young people, basically out of the American blues and rhythm community that then became like in a weird way rock music for the longest time. Like when I say pop music, what do you think of?
Katy Perry and Justin Bieber, Kesha,
Exactly.
Hanson, Britney Spears.
And that all of those artists you just named have a sound that they share. Like they have qualities that they share. And that in your head means pop music. When I say pop music, what I mean is like Madonna, Katy Perry, that kind of shit. Lady Gaga. But pop music just means the most popular music, the music that sells the most.
Yep.
And so in 1965, rock and roll was pop music. Like if you were looking at the pop charts, it was all rock and roll. It was like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Fats Domino, that kind of shit. And even though it was like it started off as this like relatively weird niche thing, now even like hip hop, like rap music is pop music, but it's not because like pop music sounds like a certain thing. It's because this is what's popular. Mm. This is what people are listening to.
It's in the 90s, strange. You could say that Metallica was pop.
You could say Nirvana.
Slayer was pop.
Nirvana was pop music.
Yeah.
Slayer and Metallica to a degree. Slayer was never on like the Billboard Top 40.
They're in the big four of the most
popular metal.
Well, they started the genre of heavy metal, so they're like kind of up there. Megadeth, Metallica.
But Metallica is the only one of those bands that would have been competing with like pop artists.
Yeah, definitely.
They're like selling more records than Michael Jackson or something like that.
Yeah.
Like Slayer is not in that conversation, and Megadeth is nowhere in that. Anthrax not in that conversation. Metallica to a degree was. But they're like the only metal band that ever did that. And then you later, like at the end of because what pop music in the 80s largely was hair metal bands like Poison, Rat, Motley Crue. That's what was on popular radio. And then like Guns N' Roses and Nirvana basically ended that. They're like, as soon as people fucking heard, Sweet Child of Mine, they're like, dude, fuck Poison. Like, fuck this shit. This is what's popular now. And then we get 10 years of fucking shoegazer rock that defines the whole decade of the 90s or whatever. Everybody goes from like spiking their hair up with like glitz and glamour and all that kind of shit to just, dressing with like flannel t-shirts and fucking talking about shooting heroin in their toes and shit. Like, it's just weird. But it's just because it was popular, because people vibed with it. And unfortunately, most people like Katy Perry. She seems like a lovely young lady, and she does dance and sing. Yeah.
I don't even know who really she is. I couldn't name one song.
Honestly,
I live in the obscure.
Honestly, like the reason why Katy Perry, I mean, I've definitely heard her music because people around listen to it. But I mean, the reason why I know who Katy Perry is and have an image of what she looks like in my head is because she was married to Russell Brand for a period of time. And I liked Russell Brand. But that's it. And there's so many instances where like my wife, like she'll be like, oh, I'm surprised you even know who this is, because she thinks that I only know niche things. Like, you only know like what you're into. And I'm like, I mean, I was like, I know who Kanye West is. Like, I'm not gonna buy his record, but I mean, I know who Kanye West is. Like, I know who Kim Kardashian. I don't wanna. I wish I didn't, but it's unavoidable.
You sound almost a bit like me in that aspect where
Yeah.
I never like I've never liked the most popular thing, or if it's something that's everybody loves, I'm like I kind of question it in a sense. Where like when it comes to the pets we have in our house, we have small animals. I have a chinchilla, we have hamsters. Music, I was like, this Britney Spears is that good. And I honestly didn't get into music till I was about 17 years old, and it was the soundtrack of Doom. Oh, who are these bands making these? Alice in Chains, Slayer, Pantera. I'm like, this I like this.
Video game soundtracks had a huge impact on my taste in music for sure. Like, and I
Mhm.
would specifically cite Tony Hawk Pro Skater and
Which one?
WWE SmackDown versus Raw. Those. Well, I think for me it was probably
Two.
it was either 2 or 3. It was the one that had the Ramones like Blitzkrieg Bop and AC/DC TNT on them, and I was like, I'd never, my parents mostly listened to like like country music and shit like that because I was in Alabama. Which I still love country music, not really like country politan pop shit, but I mean like I have an appreciation for country music a lot. But uh I didn't really know like rock and roll, like hard rock. And then like I hear the Ramones, like this is the first time I hear punk rock for real. And then I hear ACDC TNT and I'm skateboarding around in my stupid and I'm like, dude, this shit fucking rules. And I was like 9 years old. And I'm like, I've immediately like went to my friends at school. Was like, guys, we're starting a rock band right now. We're rock stars, bro. We're playing rock and roll. And I'm like, it changed the whole course of my life. And that, and I think maybe a little bit later, but SmackDown versus Raw had Megadeth and Marilyn Manson in the soundtrack. And even like for a long time, The Beautiful People was like the theme song to WWE Raw. And like that was like how I started to listen into like more like industrial metal music because that's at the early 2000s, like that was popular. Porn, like even I love Limp Bizkit. I know people hate them, but I fucking love Limp Bizkit. But even the more like new metal stuff like Mudvayne and Slipknot and that kind of shit was like for whatever reason very 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 popular. Linkin Park was an extremely popular band despite being like this weird hip hop rap shit that they were.
Yeah, I get it. All my music started from. I mean, even the music I was like asking people, oh, yeah, like these, what should I listen to? Are people that I met in the Doom community that I freaking Combi Christ I'm listening to recently. I learned about them through a fellow friend on Z Day.
Mhm.
Maybe that and other games I have. I got Quake 2 on PS1. It's all remixes of Pantera by a band called Sonic Mayhem.
Yep.
So I wouldn't know who Pantera was. Tony Hawk's 2 and 4 on PS1 is awesome. Has Static X in there. I think there's another track from AC/DC in there. So it's so much of my life has been founded due to the gaming, really. Sorry, parents. Like
Yeah,
the
it's
games
true.
raised me.
I think it's actually quite a shame. Also, Need for Speed Underground 2 was a big influence on me music wise because I played the shit out of that game. But for kids today, right? If they're playing video games, that it's actually a thing. It happened probably about I'm gonna ballpark 15. No, it's 2025 now. About somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago. Uh, you stopped having a lot of licensed music in game soundtracks because the record companies kind of
Yeah.
caught on to like we're not getting our how much money we deserve or want or whatever the fuck. So like back in the day we had all these games that had like real songs in them, like real rock bands, real punk bands, real hip hop, all that kind of shit were in the games. the old WWE games had all this licensed music in it. Like, I actually spoke with one of the guys. I was at Gamescom, and it was when AEW was putting out their Fight Forever wrestling game, and I, was like talking in the back with a bunch of the producers on it, and one of the dudes was saying, "Yeah, man, it's a shame because like back in the day, we had these big budgets for soundtrack stuff. We could get all this amazing music, and you just can't do that anymore. Like it's really, really hard to like license commercial music for game soundtracks. So like kids playing Fortnite and shit, they're not hearing, you know, music of the zeitgeist or whatever. It's just whatever shit that they put into it that like some nothing against the composers who make game soundtracks. Don't get me wrong. There's a place for that. But like you're missing out on that sort of like multimedia conglomeration collaborative process of like it used to be cool. Like you could break a band by like putting their song in a video game.
Yeah.
Like I learned like I was playing like Red Out or something like that. What the Burnout? I don't know. It was one of those games where you drive cars and you shoot people out of your windshield at a target and that kind of thing. But it had
Twisted Metal.
No, it wasn't Twisted Metal.
What's Twisted Metal?
No, but it had like Rob Zombie and like Alice in Chains and shit like that on the soundtrack, and then I got really into Wolfmother because they were also on that same soundtrack. I was like, who is this? Never heard of these guys before. Turned out I really, really loved that band, just because they've made it onto that game soundtrack, and that was a great way for musicians to get featured. I think more musicians, like if you're like an indie musician out there, should definitely consider working with game studios and shit for soundtracks and licensing your music, because it's a great way to get discovered. It just doesn't happen anymore.
Back in my day.
Yeah. Like the only games that have like budgets for that are like NFL, and even NFL Madden, they just have like the music that is already part of their ecosystem.
Right.
Like Carrie Underwood songs and fucking, I interviewed the guy who made the NFL Madden theme song at one point because he also did Doom 64 and Quake 64 soundtrack. Aubrey Hodges, very interesting guy, but he just made the soundtrack for NFL Madden's video games like way back in the day, and wild. What a weird career. So you just don't have like you're not gonna, I don't know, you're not gonna hear Combi Christ in a new video game this year probably. You should probably reach out to them and be like, hey, you want to be in a video game, and we'll just slam them into Stellar Valkyrie or some shit. So it completely doesn't fit the theme of the game, but
hidden track.
Yeah. Yeah. Or do it like a trailer, like a, music video trailers are pretty popular. We did that a bit at 3D Realms for a while. There's a few games where we had, popular enough artists do not the game soundtrack, but like a trailer music video with us. That was really cool. I just think that there's so many more opportunities to collaborate for marketing purposes for both sides. Needs to be done more. There's not enough of that, like that Wu-Tang Clan aspect, everybody's out for themselves in a group. But we've been talking for like almost 2 hours now. I guess I kind of want to like just sort of close out with like, what are your goals? Like, what kind of games do you see yourself making in the future? Like some bucket list kind of shit. Like, what do you want to do in the industry?
I think Stellar Valkyrie is, honestly, I can't comment on the future. It's not happened, but I think I really feel it'll be the start to something great. Other than that, I kind of just want to keep using the skills I've learned. If it turns into making props for games in 3D, or if it turns into just me sketching out level designs on a piece of paper and then putting into Blender and other 3D modeling programs, blocking in the levels and then handing off to an art team. That's good for me, and see where it would take me, really.
It's very interesting how you can kind of like slowly network your way into different things. Like I had a conversation years ago with Chuck Jones, who not Warner Brothers Looney Tunes Chuck Jones. Everybody thinks that, but he's also an animator and a character designer. But he worked back in the 90s. He was really instrumental in like Duke Nukem and Half-Life. Like he made a lot of really prolific video game characters. Yeah, and then he ended up working for Warner Brothers. Ironically, right? Ironically, ended up working for Warner Brothers on the Lord of the Rings games. And for like a huge chunk of his career, all he did all the time was design armor and weapons for orcs in Lord of the Rings. And then on the other end of that, when he finally left that job, he was like, it was like impossible to find a new gig because even though I had all this like, Half-Life, Duke Nukem, like that wasn't really relevant anymore. And it's just like most of my portfolio is just orc armor. And it's like, if the game doesn't require armor and weapons for orcs, I don't have anything to show. Then he ended up, I think he came back and worked on Wrath a little bit, like did some consultation shit with us. But yeah, very interesting fellow. But I mean, that could happen to you. For all you know, you end up just with some weird substance designer job or whatever. For like, maybe you pay your bills making orc armor, and then on the side you're making Stellar Valkyries and shit. Just be open minded, man. Like you just don't know. You just don't know. Somebody that it might be like a weird thing with go back to the beginning of the conversation, like Adventures of Square, when I'm like, oh, I can't get Captain J. There's no way. That guy's probably like doing something else. And then like, years after Adventures of Square, I'm like, hey, we're making this game kind of like Adventures of Square. Like, would you like to work for us? Dude, it's really good always to talk to you, man. And I think not to put anybody else down, but like you have greatly you've been a huge asset in the Keep in general. Just by being flexible and putting in a lot of effort, you sort of set the standard for like when we were kind of down in the dumps, like having lost Scumhead and then trying to kind of rebuild the project after that. You set the standard for how hard we were going to work and really like brought a lot of steam back into the whole group. So I appreciate you, man, and got a lot of respect and love for you.
I love you too. This game is going to do great. Going to sell.
Better.
We're going to do a good job.
Get better. Or else.
Otherwise, I'm sorry.
Well, first of all, I got to say thank you to Kevin for coming on the show and for everything that he does at In the Keep. He's really, really stellar, and I'm super happy to be working with people like him. Man, our whole team is amazing, and Kevin's one of them. And especially want to thank Kevin's wife, Nikki Olson, for taking care of Kevin, because I don't think we could survive without him, and I don't think he could survive without her. Shout out to the both of them. I know we mentioned it in the episode, but I'll throw a link in the show notes for their children's book series, Pitter Patter. So, if you're one of those folks out there like me with a kiddo on the way, or you got a young kid, or you just like children's books yourself, weirdo. Yeah, definitely grab that. It's on Amazon and print to order. So grab several copies. I don't know, birthdays, Christmas. It's a long way till Christmas, but for next year, have a bunch of them on hand just in case. Thank you to all of our supporters on Patreon. So Shannon, Bridge, Michael, Frederick, and Brad, I want to give you guys a shout out. Thank you for all the love and support. If you are listening to this show and you want to support it, there's lots of ways you can do it. I'll throw a link to my book list. You can just buy me a book if you want to. That's a new way. Also, there's like one-time donation link on the support tab at the bottom of our website, and the Patreon link also. So consider doing that. I love you. God love you. Stay in the Keep.